I want to apologize in advance for Matt because I've asked him many times to change that intro. I'm going to blame this one on Matt. That's a pretty outdated intro, and we definitely got to do a new one and a more up-to-date one. So it's not Matt's fault. It's really Sean Liu's fault, who can't be here with us today. But anyways, welcome to Veeam Live. If this is the first time you're joining us, we're very happy to have you. If you're returning, of course, we always enjoy having you and making the show great and participating. For those joining us for the first time, this is a live episode, so you will have the opportunity to interact via the chat. If you've got the stream going on the right-hand side, you're going to see a little chat window. You can actually fully expand that out separate if you've got two monitors or if you want to have them separate. That way you can see what's going on with the chat and maybe have the stream on full screen, which will be better because of the presentations and everything else that we have going on. So welcome to Veeam Live. I am Jose Mendoza, one of the hosts. I've got Matt Price here with us. He's the producer. And Matt, we had a big announcement today. What's that?
Huge announcement. Veeam Availability Suite 9.5 is now officially released. It's on the website. You guys can download it, upgrade, install it. Tons of new features. You want to toss that up?
Yeah, absolutely.
Just a couple of what's new. You know, a lot of this you guys may have heard about. We've got, you know, advanced REFS integration. And one of the really nice things is, you know, we fully support Server 2016, you know, already. You know, with that REFS, we've got enterprise scalability enhancements. Another big one is Nimble, Snapshot integration for those Nimble users out there.
Absolutely. You can go to Veeam.com right now and download it, in case you're wondering. As soon as you go to the Veeam.com landing page, you're going to see all the information on how to pull it down. So please go to Veeam.com after the show. Don't do it right now. And as always, make sure you read the release notes. Make sure you read the best practices guide and everything else that we have up there before you decide to upgrade. So, and do a backup. Don't forget to back up. It's always good to back up. So anyways, so very excited to have you today. We've got a great episode, a very important topic around ransomware that comes up all the time. I can tell you I get questions, Matt, probably at least once or twice a week from a partner or customer asking, you know, what they should do when it comes to, you know, avoiding something like that happening.
Yep, very important topic.
So we'll get this show started, but before we do that, remember, participate. You'll get a chance to enter our big drawing for Veeam 2017, which is going to be in New Orleans. You'll be entering for an opportunity to go, fully paid flight, hotel, lodging, meals, everything. I mean, I'm talking about, this is a huge package cost-wise, and it's a lot of fun. You'll also get the opportunity to get certified, VMCE certified, which is a big, big deal. So please participate. You'll get a chance at the end. The presenters will ask you some questions. You can win some ebooks, and of course, enter for Veeam. So let's not delay this anymore. We're going to go to our panel and let them introduce themselves and get this show started quickly here for you guys.
Jose, so are Darren and Karen allowed to win again? Because you know they're going to be participating.
Of course.
Okay, just curious. So Jason Leyva here again, Solutions Architect here at Veeam. I'm joined with Duncan. So let him introduce himself.
Yes, Duncan Macklin with Heat Software.
Okay, tell us about what you do.
I am the Solution Director for Heat Software's PatchLink product, which allows for third-party patching within the Microsoft System Center suite. But joined the company just over a year ago after spending about 19 years consulting with organizations worldwide around SMS and SCCM, and basically saw what Heat Software was doing, filling a big gap that helps address part of this ransomware issue we're facing, and got so excited about it, I didn't want to just recommend it to customers. I wanted to be a part of the thing. So
Sure.
in the software business now.
Yeah, well, it's very good. So we had a discussion leading up to today's session here, and as I told Duncan, I think he made the most compelling argument as to why you need to take action today for ransomware, just some of the facts and stats and things he threw out there. So I'm hoping he can share a little bit of that with the audience here so to get them really thinking about it.
Absolutely. We'll jump right into that if
Yeah,
you want to.
just
Go
slide
ahead
deck,
and
Jose.
we'll jump into slides. So I'll ask you a question here before I pop it up. And actually, let me just go ahead and show you here. So we'll skip some of this. When do you think the first ransomware came out? What year?
Well, let's see here. I started messing with computers probably. Yeah, we'll say
Right.
1997. So we'll go with that.
97. All right. So, 20-something years ago almost.
Yeah.
Close. No cigar. It was actually 1989. Now,
Man.
the name of this particular Trojan was actually AIDS /PC Cyborg. Now,
Okay.
if you think about it, we're talking 1989, right? So one of the things that was on the forefront of a lot of people's minds was the AIDS epidemic, right? So cleverly, this actor used social engineering, a hot topic of the time, to be able to distribute this malware and get it installed and affecting these systems. And the way they did it was basically putting a diskette out that was supposed to be a university study on the AIDS epidemic. That's what was on the label.
Right.
So as these are getting into people's hands, of course they're going to put it in, trying to find out more information about this AIDS epidemic, right? And what ended up happening was it didn't actually encrypt the file systems like we see with today's variants of this type of malware. But what it did do is jarble the file names in such a manner that the file system basically became useless.
Okay.
Unless, as you can see on my screen, and I'll just zoom in here a little bit, you sent the snail mail payment to this Panama address, as you can see here. So, not too far off from what's actually happening today, right? Using social engineering and demanding payment in order to return your system back to, its original state. So let's fast forward about 30 years, and this is what we're looking at today. People are pretty familiar with the, Saw movies and Jigsaw, obviously being one of the main bad characters in the whole, saga series. But, imagine having this come up on your screen as an end user and it painting across in real time as if they're typing on your own system. And at the end of it, you get this countdown saying, you better start paying up or your files are going to start being deleted every single hour. So not a whole lot has changed, right? Except now we have ransomware payments through Bitcoin going into the dark web, and there's a whole string in series and reasoning why you may not want to pay that ransomware or pay that ransom for it. So that's kind of what we're looking at today and kind of how this is evolving. But, the threats are just becoming so severe and so frequent that, we as IT pros have a bit of a responsibility. Now, one of the things, I didn't really talk about in the introduction is also being a member of the FBI's InfraGard division, right? And this is the Bureau's means of being able to partner with the private sector to be able to help protect and defend our nation's critical infrastructures and assets. And of course, information technology is part of that, right? So I have that responsibility working with the FBI to be able to help our, nation's corporations, learning institutes, and government agencies against these threats, known and unknown.
Sure.
But we, as IT pros in this community, we also have a responsibility, folks, and I'm going to call you out right now. We have the presence and awareness. We know what the impact is. We know what the triggers are, but our friends, our family, they may not, right?
Yep.
So the onus is on us to be able to share that information with them, help educate them about these threats, tell them the means and ways to look at an email differently with a little bit more suspicion, you know, and what to do and what not to do. Because ultimately, it's these friends and families that we interact with that do what? They get up every morning and they go to work in corporate America, and they end up being that same end user that we're having to deal with on a daily basis in our role, right? So the onus is really upon us to help educate them, help them protect themselves. And you know, you guys are even doing some neat stuff there as well, right? So Veem backup, you know, consumer.
Veem endpoint, right? So the ability to download that for anyone, right? It's not just for enterprises or corporations. So people do have the ability to protect their data, have a way out of instances like that may occur. So
absolutely, which I have on my own laptop as well. You know, so I'm running your kit and making sure that if in the event something does happen,
you have a way to go
you know, I have steady backups that I can count on. Now, obviously, you know, you have to make sure those backups are good, right? So there's you know, things that you guys are doing, and we'll get into that as well as we transgress here. So, you know, again, talking about the impact of ransomware and helping educate our own folks, you know, in our circle of trust, so to speak, so that when they do go back into their organizations, you know, they have something beyond just what corporate America is providing, right? Because the reality of the situation is, and I'm sure you guys out there can agree, you know, most of the time, as far as security awareness training, what most corporations will do is have some little checkbox that, you know, HR makes sure that it gets ticked as part of the onboarding process. But ultimately, you're looking at something like a 60, 90-minute session where someone from IT comes in and tells you what you can do, what you can't do, what acceptable use is, how to treat sensitive emails, those kinds of things. And then what happens?
That's it.
That's it. They go into their roles, they get into their daily routines, and there's nothing else that happens, right? There's no continuous training or education around security awareness. Now, some organizations out there, and I'll applaud you, that do use something like targeted phishing schemes and making sure end users don't fall for it. But you know what? In reality, it's typically 60 to 70% that do. So we need something to be more effective in that continuous education and keeping these organizations on their toes and making sure that they're testing their employees appropriately and going after these phishing attacks, against their own users to make sure that it's a safe fail versus, a hard fail with a real situation where they have been targeted. And along those lines, one of the things we were talking about earlier that I really think we need to bring to the wider audience is, I can't stress this enough. You guys are helping these actors with your social media profiles. If you look at spear phishing, I'm going to give you an example. Well, before I get into the example, let's talk about how it actually took place. If you look at some of the social media sites like LinkedIn, for example, I'm sure pretty much every professional watching right now has a LinkedIn profile, and you have probably been guilted by LinkedIn to
fill it out, complete the profile.
Fill it out, right? If you're sitting at 70%, every time you log in, they're going to suggest, where'd you go to high school? Where were you previously employed? What college did you attend? What is all this information providing? Means to be able to spear phish targeted individuals. So you start on LinkedIn, you find the company you're wanting to hack. You start looking at employees that are there. Then you start looking at their profile and all the information, what high school, college, what affiliations, etc. I'll give you a perfect example of how this was perfectly executed using nothing more than LinkedIn. In the UK, there was a targeted spear phishing attack going after a particular organization. This actor used the administrative assistant for one of the executive level directors in the company, found out everything he needed to from LinkedIn, where she went to high school. Also found out from that she was the captain of the women's rugby team. found out during that time period who the coach was of the rugby team for the high school, set up a Gmail account appearing to be that individual coach, sent her the ransomware malware installer in a zip file, basically labeled as high school photos.
And why wouldn't I? That's my coach. So yeah,
Exactly.
yeah,
Appears like the coach, knows
Yeah,
about
yeah,
high
yeah,
school,
yeah.
photos from the team. Of course, she's going to ignore any pop-up, and guess what happens?
Yeah.
That system's infected, and it sat there infected for 2 months before they realized it, and is siphoning out all the data that they needed to. So think about that, guys, as you're filling out these profiles and providing all this detailed information about who you are, where you come from, what you've done. Remember the impact that that could have in a spear phishing attack against you or your organization. So yeah, there's a perfect example of how malware gets into these organizations.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I guess there's other ways as well that that companies subject themselves, open up gaps that, you know.
Oh, absolutely. You know, but in reality, this was obviously the fault of the employee not taking a step back, not having, you know.
Well, it's education.
Right.
That's not
which
being aware.
goes into everything we were talking about
Yeah,
earlier.
yeah.
But there's other ways that, you know, it could be that same, you know, administrative assistant that goes and visits, you know, the Post or the New York Times.
Yeah.
These are legitimate websites, but all these mass media outlets have, you know, their advertising networks, which they don't really filter or censor, look at anything other than the revenue that they're
Right, sure.
generating, right? So we have these malicious actors now that are actually injecting their advertising, which is what it's become known as now, but basically their malware into these ad networks. And the scary fact is, what's happening right now is these malwares are becoming JScript oriented. So a user doesn't even have to click on the ad. All they have to do is visit a legitimate website and perhaps have a vulnerability in something like Flash Player. Right? So there's a known vulnerability in Flash Player. Some actors taking advantage of that through their exploit, and now with these ad networks serving up these malicious ads, they don't even have to click on the link. It just automatically, it's what's called a drive-by infection. So there's one way that these can get in there. Now, obviously, organizations have an onus on their own to keep these applications up to date, right, with the latest, you know, security releases. And that's one of the things that Heat Software does help with.
Right.
You know, our solution, the product that I'm responsible for, is the Heat Patch Link desktop product. It seamlessly integrates into the SCCM admin console, brings in all these vendors' third-party updates so that these organizations can help keep those, you know, applications up to date with the latest security releases. But in reality, you know, what's happening here today is, you know, most organizations, and you guys out there, I'm sure you're pretty much in the same boat. You know, in reality, over the past 3 years, no more than 15% of all the known vulnerabilities out there have actually been attacking the Microsoft platform. And when I say that, I mean the Windows desktop OSs, the server OSs, the server workloads like IIS, SQL, Exchange, etc. Again, over the past 3-year period, no more than 15% have been going after those Microsoft apps. It's all the other third-party applications and non-Windows OSs. So you guys are so heads down right now trying to keep up with the volume of the Microsoft updates every month, and you know, I applaud them. You know, over the past 13 years since we've had this trustworthy computing initiative for Microsoft, Patch Tuesday the following year, you know, we've done a very good job with getting our processes and framework in place for patching our Microsoft products, and good on you for that. But guys, it's time to take your heads out of the sand and realize there's something else going on here. The other 85% of all these vulnerabilities, we've got to keep these applications patched in order to help protect these systems from these types of infections. You know, same thing with our, you know, anti-malware, you know, antivirus solutions as well.
Yeah.
we have to keep those up to date, keeping them on a regular refresh cycle, and even taking into consideration perhaps having multiple scan engines on these systems. One of the things that I believe I saw it in one of the FBI InfraGard decks, but having just a second scan engine on a system improves your detection rate by 19%.
It's a big chunk. I'm guessing a lot of people worry about performance by doing that.
There's going to be a negligible performance impact by having a second scan engine there, but honestly, put it through the mill, and in fact, I encourage organizations to do that, to put it through a cook-off, take it into the lab environment, start throwing some of the test scenarios out there, and actually, I can show some of that right now if you like.
Yeah, I'd love to see that.
All right, let's go ahead and switch over then. So here, we still got the screen. Excellent. So, one of the things that I talk with a lot of organizations, obviously, I have a product that ties into System Center, but, coming out of 19 years of consulting with organizations globally, I still cannot take that consultant hat off. So I always ask questions that don't have a damn thing to do with our product or what we're there for, but because I do like helping these organizations improve their security posture, I get into things like talking about endpoint protection or some of the other things we're going to look at. But those of you out there, and I'm sure we have right now some, I want to say 60 million client seats running SCCM, current branch releases, which is what it's called. So 1511, 1602, 1606. The majority of our viewers out here are going to be having SCCM in their environment. They may not be responsible for it, but it's in the environment, and this is some of the capabilities that it provides out of the box. But a lot of organizations don't take advantage of the endpoint protection because they don't see Microsoft as being a real security player. But let me tell you something, folks. In reality, we have Microsoft Security Response Center and all the resources behind it. So if you look at things like Bing, Live, O365, Xbox Live, Azure, all these things, there's billions of transactions, authentications, et cetera, that they're handling on a daily and monthly basis. Not to mention all the attacks that come against Microsoft and all their domains. So they have a slew of security relevant data, threat analytics, et cetera, that they bring into their products. And endpoint protection further emphasizes that. So let's take a look at it actually. Here in the assets and compliance underneath endpoint protection, I've got one set up here for us today. So you can actually have very specific policies directed towards collections of systems. So you could have endpoint protection for your servers that are scaled back, maybe not so intensive, and a much different policy for your desktops or collection of desktops. Maybe you don't want endpoint protection on your executives' PCs, for example. So you could have whatever types of policies you want, and it provides all the capabilities that you would expect to see with any antivirus solution. But one of the things I love to show is its effectiveness. So this is eCard. Now this is part of the antivirus industry, is collective, coming together and agreeing on a particular way to be able to test against antivirus solutions, no matter who the vendor is. So this test file is actually nothing more than a string of text, and this string of text is actually a DOS program. So if you save this as a .com, not like a .com website, but a command program, you can execute it in a command shell and it'll run. But basically, I'm just going to copy this to the clipboard and then fire up my notepad, paste that text in, excuse me, there we go. And as soon as I say, let's go test, boom, it's already detected it. Immediately taken its action, cleansed it. So, again, this is just a way of being able to test the antivirus solutions that you have in place. So, throw Trend on there, throw McAfee, then throw System Center Endpoint Protection. See what kind of detection rates you're getting, what the responses are, the behavior afterwards. But again, consider having that multiple scan engine approach to be able to get those higher. Because all these vendors are on different timetables, and do you want to take the risk of one vendor being a day behind potentially, and your systems being impacted by a 0-day vulnerability? It's rolling the dice, folks. So let's see. Let's take a look at a couple other things here while we have Config Manager up here. Some of the other things are really around how do you have that continuous monitoring, right? So you have these environments, you've got some of the controls in place, but now you need to be able to continuously monitor for these. Some of that capability is actually built into Configuration Manager through compliance baselines, and Microsoft actually provides a very compelling solution that can plug into it. And I think actually, we could probably come back to this. Let me bring this up here. So
Duncan,
here,
quick question while you're doing that, just from the audience, they want to know what the eCar file that you've demonstrating right now. If the endpoint protection doesn't catch it, what happens? Is it going to harm their system, or is it just a pure test?
No, it's just a pure text file. And like I said, you could actually run it in a command shell. I forget what the displayed output is, but it's something to the effect of eCar test file succeeded. But yeah, it's completely harmless otherwise, but it's a really good way, regardless of what antivirus solution that you're actually using, to be able to test its detection rates. Now, obviously there's, malware out there that's slightly less destructive, but I hate introducing that even into a lab environment, because once it's inside the house, it's really, you don't want to let that get outside of its containment. So,
so if it doesn't detect it, then maybe you should look a little further for your...
Absolutely. If your AV is not detecting that, then you have some serious issues there. But maybe that's just for time and purposes. One of the things that we should talk about. What does happen if you do get infected? And you have had some malware, ransomware come into the environment. What is that incident response?
How do you get it back?
Folks out there, if you don't know what your incident response plan is, and you're in a security role within your organization, or you're part of IT, and you're not aware of what that incident response plan is, there's a disconnect there, and you need to fix that pretty quickly. So while we go to the board, and I'll just kind of highlight what the typical approach is for most organizations. And if you think about or read any of the things like CISO magazine, etc., the approach is pretty common from one platform to the other, or organization to the other. But what I like to start with, and let me undo that.
Yeah, that's on the left hand. There you go.
Yeah, there we go. Okay. And there. Now I should be on pen. So number one, stop. I cannot emphasize this enough. Do not panic, okay? That's the first thing you have to do, is just keep a level head. During this time period, really what a lot of organizations will want to do is to immediately start whatever recovery process is. Get the system back up and running as quickly as possible, right? Knee-jerk reaction, yes, I understand. You need these systems to be online, you need them to be performing, but ultimately what you're doing in that process is potentially killing all the forensic data, right? So stop, don't panic, get the team together, right? That's all in this process. Now, here is where we're going to be effectively protecting that forensic data. At this time, you probably, if this is an actual breach into your organization, you will want to contact your local FBI department. They do have tools and resources to help you get back online from a ransomware infection, as well as resources to go against the forensics, find those digital fingerprints, and hopefully identify who the actors are, whether a lone wolf or part of a consortium, so to speak. So that's part of the process. And one of the things that the FBI will say is don't pay. Now, I cannot emphasize this enough, because in reality, folks, it's not just the payment to get your systems back online. What you're doing when you make that payment is you're encouraging the behavior, right? So you're not only encouraging that single actor, but you're essentially recruiting other malicious actors, because now they're starting to see financial benefit as a result. Secondly, there's no guarantee that you're actually going to get your decryption key as a result of paying the ransom. And we've seen this multiple times over, where organizations have paid that ransom, but they haven't got their decryption key as a result. And then lastly, most importantly, is in these situations, if you do pay that ransom, there is a likelihood, and we have seen this in multiple situations, where those ransom payments haven't just been, getting your decryption key, but they've also been, filtered through the Bitcoin system and laundering into the dark web, where they're actually funding this continued cyber terrorism, as well as offline real-world terrorist activities. So you're funding those campaigns, not you, but it's potentially a situation. So keep that in mind as well. So secondly is containment, right? So you want to be able to contain the threat. Now this may mean different things. It may mean having to install patches immediately, right, to be able to close off that vulnerable attack surface that the exploit is taking advantage of. It may mean having to reset passwords or file folder permissions, ACLs, access, etc. You may have to kill network access accounts, etc. So keep those things in mind as well. And then obviously you're going to have to do an assessment of the damages and know where, oops, how did that happen? Right. Nope, that's the wrong one. Don't want to do that. Undo, there we go. Make sure we're back here. So assessment of the damages. No, essentially, how do I turn this one off? There we go. You're gonna have to know the who, what, and where. And what I mean by that is essentially you're gonna have to know who was the entry point. If it is an end user, their system's been impacted with ransomware, some other kind of malware. Has it spread beyond that single user? What information has been gathered off of those systems, stolen off of those systems, and then where else has that information or this malware variant gone to? So being able to have that assessment in place, know the who, what, and where of it. Now for larger organizations, unfortunately, am I just that?
You're writing behind the box. That's fine. You can keep on writing. It's
okay.
You can see it, yeah.
If you click that little drop down on the upper right of the box you're writing in, yeah.
This?
There should be a delete or undo.
I'll leave it.
Yeah.
So notification, larger organizations out there, you can't swipe or sweep this stuff under the carpets anymore. You look at the breaches with Home Depot, Target, Anthem, Healthcare, etc. Guys, unfortunately, you're going to not only have to go public with this information, notifying anybody that's been impacted by this breach. Myself, I've had 2 credit cards canceled in the past 2 years because of this stuff. One was a Bank of America, the other was a direct result of the Target breach, which impacted my Bank of America situation. You guys out there, you've gone through the same thing, I'm sure, but also notification internally, right? So we need to educate our users of what has happened, make them aware, help them become heightened to this type of activity so that it doesn't be repeated by those same end users, right? So you have to have that notification channel set up, ready to fire, and your teams need to be prepared to deliver this on a moment's notice. This cannot be something that you're sitting in a war room trying to figure out what the messaging is going to be.
Right.
You should already have this in place. And then lastly is lessons learned, right? So you have to be able to go back into that war room after the fact, figure out what the root cause was, what the triggers were, how you could have prevented it, and then obviously put those mechanisms and systems or processes, permissions, et cetera, in place so as to prevent it from occurring again in the future. But that's basically, you know, the typical incident response plan as most organizations are going to have to implement. So
Yeah, makes sense. Great information, great information. One of the things we talked about earlier is as another point of entry is BYOD. It's pretty common these days, right, within the workplace. People want to use whatever it is that they may have that the company doesn't provide for them.
Absolutely. You know, and of course, all that does is, number one, it creates a management nightmare, right? Because, you know, we become such a coddling society, right? We just cater to every women need, and I'm not going to get onto a soapbox here, but you guys out there, you know what I'm talking about. There's a certain culture that exists today that, you know, basically you can't be told no anymore. So we do have these BYOD devices coming into the corporate landscape, and we're expected to support these things.
Sure.
Now, each one of these, obviously, they're bringing them in, and they're having the question because they want access to corporate resources, right? Things like email, you know, O365 or SharePoint access, these kinds of things, you know, running off of, you know, their iPhone, their iPad, their Android device, whatever the case may be. Now, we as admins are responsible for first identifying these devices even exist on the network, that, you know, how are we supposed to manage them? How are we supposed to know they exist? What software is installed on them so that we can actually patch that software, you know, novel concept of keeping them up to date, right? Protecting against these threats. You know, so that becomes a whole new issue that we're being challenged with. And, you know, we have to look at things like what's available for device control. You know, Microsoft is making huge advancements in that type of technology and what's being built into Windows 10, not bolted on, but part of the core operating system right down to the kernel. You know, these are not afterthoughts. What they are doing with Windows 10 Enterprise Edition and the capabilities around being able to control devices, control applications, control credentials, etc., fantastic, you know. But ultimately, that's for Windows 10. What about all this other stuff? You know, we have to have solutions out there. You know, Heat Software, we're not just around patch management. We have a lot of capabilities that we bring to the table. End-to-end lifecycle management and a lot around unified endpoint security, things like device control, application whitelisting, antivirus, obviously patch managements across the board in all of our solutions, but we also have a very compelling mobile device management solution. But you have to have something in place to take care of that. Whether if it's our product, another one, you know, make sure that you're accounting for these devices, because otherwise that's another attack surface and another threat vector into your organization that you may not be aware of.
Very good. Yeah, that makes perfect sense. That was one that kind of hit home. But a lot of us use BYOD devices.
Yeah.
So, well, very good. So I think, you know, obviously getting at it when the issue occurs, when there's no other way to get things back online, where do we need to go, and what do people need to do? You know. Right.
So it's the whole how do we recover from it? You know, and obviously, like I said earlier, you know, don't do the knee-jerk reaction and just try to go straight away. You know, think about what you're doing. Try to protect the forensics as great as possible. You know, if you have your backups, try to restore those backups to a separate physical server than the one that's been impacted. Take that thing offline, get it off the network, but protect the forensics. You guys do some really killer stuff around virtualization management and everything else. So you have solutions that you bring to the table that's probably worth mentioning too.
Yes, we do. And I think I'll take to the whiteboard for that. Jose, if you want to kick us over there.
Yeah.
Yeah, I have one queued up here actually, so we're good to go. All right, so really, just like protecting your data any other time, ransomware is just as important to practice 3-2-1. Having multiple copies of your data, in multiple types of media, and getting one of those off-site. So, as we've been talking about ransomware, as it's become more and more popular of a conversation that we have, one of the things that we're doing is we're trying to put some best practices in place around, Veeam and how we can really protect you for your backups. And Duncan made a good point earlier is Veeam, along with all the other file types that ransomware targets, Veeam is becoming in a lot of other backup applications more and more widely used. So we haven't seen it today, but we can see where eventually those backup files could be a target for encryption, right? So we really want to make sure we protect those. So if you look at a basic Veeam architecture and how we would have multiple copies of your data in Veeam, the first place I like to take a look at is my backup server, right? So first thing I would want to do is control access to this guy, right? I want to make sure my credentials are unique. We really don't want everybody being able to access our Veeam backup and replication server. Some people have even found it where they take this off of the web altogether. They try to keep it intranet only, intranet only, so so it doesn't get out and it is less subjective to being able to get access or to reach those attacks. So that's one place I've seen. Another area I've seen is as people start using technologies like some of our partners like HPE, Data Domain, that have proprietary protocols such as Boost or Catalyst. Those protocols require their own credentials. They're not accessible to the Windows operating system that Veeam sits on, not natively, right? It's its own API, it's its own protocol in itself. So if something were to infect this machine, it wouldn't be readily accessible. So that is something we're finding is this mechanism or this interface here, again, is a proprietary one, so people have gone that way. Another one that Duncan had said that's it's a great one that he mentioned earlier is when the backup's done, take this backup storage offline, right? So make it where it isn't always there to that server, to where your backups aren't always readily accessible. Right?
Exactly.
So you speak towards that,
if you can't attach to it, then obviously you can't infect it, right?
Exactly right. That's exactly right. So
and please don't give it a public IP. We've seen that in recent days. Luckily, a lot of the storage vendors will tell you, even send you a warning, not to give that storage a public IP.
Yes, they will. They will flag you for doing that, as they should. So
Sean Liu did that with one of our storage devices.
Flag or flog? They should do both.
So that's your backups. Now those backups need to go somewhere else, right? We say multiple copies. So naturally, tape is people go to that because for one, it's cheap medium, and it's also easy to get off site, right? I can archive tape. I can get it out of the data center offline, and I can go back to it whenever I need to. Now, this copy here is pretty important because when that issue occurs, after you've isolated the server that has had the ransomware on it, you may want to do something like an instant VM recovery. You want to power on that VM directly from where it sits to get you back online very fast. Now, it may be a situation where if you don't do that, you may look at having virtual machine replicas, because as you know, Veeam can do VM level replication. Right. So if this isn't the way I need to go, or maybe it's multiple servers that got infected to where my backup storage is not going to run many VMs and off of it. It's backup storage. It's not intended to be my production storage. But if I have replicas of them, they're simply ready to just be failed over to. Right? I can turn them on, and those services, that application is back online as I need it. The last way to do it is obviously backups being copied off-site. It's another fail-safe. Maybe you don't replicate everything, but you definitely want to have multiple copies of your backups somewhere else, right? So you can get to those. And this is also even outside just ransomware, is if those backups become inaccessible, you need to have them in a different location that you can go back and restore your infrastructure to. So really there is multiple copies of data, primary copy, secondary copy on disk backups, a third copy on a different medium being tape. And then again, the VM replicas is something I would not forget about as well, because remember the concept of a backup is you have to restore it. You make a backup to restore from it. A VM replica, you fail over to it. It's already ready to go. If you don't have a DR location today, Veeam has Cloud Connect replication built into it, so you could buy the infrastructure, or excuse me, license the infrastructure from a service provider to be able to have that capability. So that's really the way Veeam looks at approaching this here. So let's go ahead and take it back over here. I think we'll do some question and answers. Maybe you have a couple more topics you want to cover as well, Duncan.
Well, we, again, talking about the whole recovery strategy, fine. So we've gone through, we've had that infection, we've gone through our incident response plan, we've recovered the systems, but ultimately getting back to what we were talking about earlier, how do we have, from those lessons learned, the continuous monitoring of these systems and making sure that we have them hardened to such an extent that we can prevent further infections of these same servers or endpoints. So if we can switch back to my screen here, what I'd like to just cover real briefly is what we were getting into earlier, and that's around compliance baseline management. Now, the majority of the organizations out there, like I said, are going to have SCCM deployed. So one of the ways that you could do that is inside of SCCM, but also just through group policy, being able to apply some of the Microsoft recommendations around hardening. So this is the Microsoft Security Compliance Manager 4.0. This product, it looked like it wasn't going to have much of a life left, and then just this past summer, Microsoft put together a virtual team to be able to keep it going. So we do see continuous improvements in it. And in fact, we should be seeing an update here pretty quickly for the Windows 10 Anniversary Edition. But what this does is essentially takes all the Microsoft hardening guides, those 300 to 500 page long documents that are just pretty exhaustive, good nighttime reading, but not really good in practice of being able to implement. So this basically productizes it, right, and makes it easily consumable so that you can take information from those guides that's been dumped into here and basically be able to export it as a GPO or be able to export it as a compliance baseline inside of SCCM for continuous monitoring. So if we look at something like, let's just say, our Windows Server 2012. We'll jump with this one. Maybe I want to look at my DNS servers and be able to have, them hardened based upon the Microsoft recommendations. I could take this wholesale right here and export it right now as a GPO or as a CAB file inside of SCCM. So if I do that and just take these recommendations from Microsoft at their wholesale value, save it as a CAB file, I can come over into SCCM, go into my compliance settings, and just right-click and import that. So now, every one of those recommendations from Microsoft becomes a configuration item inside of SCCM. Okay. When you push this out to a collection, at that point, what it's going to do is evaluate each one of those settings that Microsoft has recommended against that system and see, is it compliant with this recommendation or not, and report that information back to your site server where you can have all that audit compliance reporting. So that Security Compliance Manager product gives these organizations leapfrog capabilities of being able to have these security compliance baselines inside of SCCM with very little effort and get huge return and visibility on the back end. And to look at exactly what that visibility looks like, at the Microsoft Ignite show, just recently, one of the things that they announced at the keynote is Power BI, which is really the direction of data visualization and utilization from Microsoft, getting to a certain extent away from SSRS or SQL reporting services. Power BI is really the future. So right now, what they're saying is that Power BI is included free with your SQL Server 2016 licensing. Okay. So now you can have dashboarding capabilities like this right out of the box, and Microsoft provides a free template for SCCM that gives tremendous visibility into an organization's overall security compliance. So what you're seeing in this left section is really the SCCM client health statistics and values. In the middle is all the endpoint protection stuff that we were just talking about.
Yeah.
What the malware infection rate is, whether or not it's turned on, protection enabled, whether or not antivirus is enabled, firewall, etc. And then over here is information about missing security updates, right? So you have the single dashboard view of what your overall organization's security posture looks like from a single dashboard view. But they get more compelling, and this is free. Microsoft provides Power BI and the template. All you need is SCCM on the back end supplying all the data, right? And
so you're not very compliant with your endpoints, is what it's saying.
yeah, basically, I'm shit out of compliance. Excuse me, but yeah. But here, we have missing updates. So this is showing where, and all this is active data. So if I just want to see the critical updates, you'll see all this information updated in real time.
Okay, yeah.
Right? So it's very, very useful. And of course, with the Heat software stuff, our products light up in here as well, because we're treated just like a Microsoft update. Here's all your software inventory, so you know where your saturation points are, where you need to be focusing your patching efforts, right? As you can see, I've got Microsoft stuff here bubbling up to the top, but if I scroll down, there's going to be Adobe and other products. Obviously, I have a very small virtual environment, but if you're dealing with thousands or tens of thousands of systems, this will help you understand where you really need to be focusing your efforts as far as patching goes, so that you can try to stop some of that drive-by infection kind of behavior.
Yeah, that's really, really powerful. Hopefully somebody out there will adopt that. And
yeah, absolutely. And like I said, this is all free stuff. Your organizations most likely have SCCM deployed. Pass a word, or if you're responsible, take a look at this stuff. PowerBI.com, or just Google or Bing, I should say, for the Microsoft Security Compliance Manager product. But like I said, I just like showing what else these organizations.
And we realize some of you on today's show may not be the guys or gals responsible for this, but obviously the show will be recorded, so pass it along to those that are, as well. So. Well, very good. I think we're about at that point where we can start asking some questions. Jose, as he said, we're going to be doing some giveaways as usual, but we'll also have the entry into the Winning for Veem on, right? So we can kick that off. So you're our guest, so I'm going to let you start with a question. Oh, no live questions? Okay. No live questions. Are we that good? Or do you guys just know all this stuff? What's that?
There's a lot of dialogue.
Oh, okay. All right. So first question.
Oh, for the giveaways?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. What were we get? In what year was the AIDS/PC Cyborg ransomware first released? What year?
It wasn't 1997.
Was not 1997, sir. No, it wasn't.
All right. So first one in the chat wins.
Karen, 1989.
All right.
Excellent. There we go. Somebody
Excellent.
was indeed paying attention. Thank you, Karen.
Yeah, very good.
That's also Taylor Swift's latest album.
1989? Yeah. Shows you how much I pay attention to her.
So much Jose pays attention to her. All right.
Check his search history.
Yeah. All right. So I mentioned a couple of ways that people with Veeam today are trying to fight ransomware for potentially getting to their backups.
Right.
If you could just name me one of those. I named a couple. Obviously Veeam is in the business of getting you back online after they occur, not actually stopping them from occurring. But we got to protect the backups as well. And I mentioned a couple of ways that you can do that today with Veeam. So if you can just name me one of those, that will get you the answer to this question. So again, just a way that you can help secure your Veeam infrastructure, if you will.
Aaron with 3-2-1 rule.
Perfect. It's a good one.
Aaron and Karen.
Easy enough.
There we go.
Yep, Aaron and Karen. They're both going to fight to get in this, to get in Veeam on again. All right, so got another one for us?
Sure. What is the version of the Microsoft Security Compliance Manager that I just showed?
Oh, wow.
Let's see if you were really in focus and paying attention.
There's also going to be a bonus question at the end. Which of the Veeam Live hosts or co-hosts gave the server a public a storage device a public IP.
Flint Bidsky.
You don't win anything. It's just a bonus question.
2016.
Negative.
Okay, so that takes Andy out. Scott Barber says 4.
Excellent, Scott. You are the winner.
All right, way to go. All right, so we talked about, it's our responsibility as IT
Yes.
pros
Yes.
to also help those out there that aren't as in the bubble as we are as to what's
Right.
going on, right? So for those people, Veeam has a product that to help them should they get attacked or something. What is that product that we have? Just give me the name of the product to help with just your average people out there, parents, whomever, that you may have. So Veeam has a product. What is it called to help with those people? For protecting their own systems.
Andy says Endpoint.
All right, way to go, Andy.
Excellent.
All right, that was
Which I can,
That's 4.
yeah, which you
Prove.
guys, yeah.
I do actually have it running on my system.
All right, so that was 4. We're gonna do one more. Let's see here. What? Name one of the ways that companies can subject themselves to being, subject or to be opened up for ransomware. Is that the right way to ask that question? Or maybe another way of asking it. A best practice maybe that they don't follow. I'll let you ask the question. You see where I'm going with that.
What are some of the attack surfaces, that can be
that's what I was looking
exploited
for. Attack surfaces that could be exploited within an
because
enterprise.
of poor, negligent security controls?
Flint Bidsky says email.
Yeah, I guess.
Probably the most prevalent as
Yeah,
well.
We'll go with that.
Flint
Make 'em so hard.
Bidsky. I like that one.
Yes.
All right. Well, that was number 5. So if you don't have any more questions out there, that actually wraps up what we have to do.
So who's the? Are we doing the grand, or is it just
Is there-
selected
is
out
it
of the
just one
hat?
of those? Yeah. How does that work, Jose? How are we doing the grand prize or the grand entered?
So good question. Everybody that answered today will actually get an entry into the
Oh,
contest.
Awesome.
Okay.
So
That works out great.
what we do is the way we did it last year, we're hoping everybody keeps coming back and joining us and promoting the show itself. So every time they win, they get an entry, and at the end we did a big raffle, with the tumbler.
So the
kinda
more
way
shows
up.
you attend, the more opportunities you get to get
Absolutely.
your name into the
More
hat
tickets,
and
exactly.
higher.
There are a few of our viewers that they had so many that you could almost see them as you were doing the tour. Yeah. So there's a lot of
Wow.
people come back. Anyways, so thanks again for coming on the show today.
Absolutely.
I tell you, it was
Fantastic.
so much great information on this topic. So I'm sure hopefully everybody out there felt the same. Sure they do.
Hopefully
So,
be of use to some of you.
yeah.
I think it was a great discussion. We definitely enjoyed having you, Duncan. Thank you for coming by. I can tell you, as I mentioned earlier, it's one of the most common questions. How, what, when,
Yeah, what do you do?
what
Yeah.
should we do?
How's
you
Veeam
know?
addressing this? And
Yep.
so are you put your contact info up, right? So people
Yeah.
can email you. You did that already. And if there's no more questions, we'll let everybody get on with their day. Thanks for watching.
Sounds great. Take care, everyone.
Remember to go to veemlive.com. Matt's going to put up my contact info here. And yep, he's got it up there. So email me for those that won. Let me know that you won, which question you answered, and then we'll send you a ebook link. So we don't have t-shirts today. We're very low on the t-shirts, so we're saving those for our end of the year grand finale. So anyways, if you missed the show, the recording will be posted in a few. For upcoming episodes, make sure you follow the live stream channel or go to veeam.com/Veeam Live. And then you can see all upcoming episodes you can register for. Thank you once again, Duncan, Jason, and Matt. Good luck, and we hope we see you guys on the next episode. So
See you
take
soon.
care.
Take care.